You've looked into a baby's eyes before. They stare back at you, completely still, wide open, like they're taking in everything around them, and you probably assumed they could see you. They can't. You are standing 2 feet away, and to that baby, you are a gray smudge, a blur with no edges, no color, no detail. You might as well be a wall. But here's the thing, that's not even the weird part. Because what a newborn actually experiences isn't just bad vision. It's something so different from anything you've felt since the day you were born that there are no words in any language that can fully describe it. Scientists have spent decades trying to understand it, and what they found doesn't just change how you think about babies, it changes how you think about reality itself. And there's one thing in particular, something that happens inside every newborn brain in the first weeks of life that we're going to get to later in this video. At birth, human vision is 20/400. To put that in context, you need 20/200 to be legally blind. A newborn is worse than that. They can only see clearly up to about 8 to 12 inches away. Everything beyond that is fog, formless, gone. And that number, 8 to 12 inches, is not random. It is the exact distance from a nursing mother's breast to her face. Evolution didn't give babies sharp, long-range vision because long-range vision wasn't the point. The point was one face, close up. That was the only visual information that mattered for survival. But it gets stranger. For the first several weeks of life, babies don't see color at all. The cells in the eye responsible for color aren't developed yet. So the world isn't just blurry, it's gray, flat and colorless and close. Imagine looking through a frosted window at a black and white photo. That's closer to what a newborn sees than anything you've experienced since the day you were born. The first colors to appear are red and green, around 3 months. Full color doesn't arrive until 4 or 5 months. So for the first months of your life, you lived inside a gray, blurry circle about the size of a dinner plate, and your brain wasn't broken. It was doing something very specific with the little it had. In 1961, a psychologist named Robert Fance ran a simple test. He showed newborns, some only hours old, 2 images side by side. One was a normal human face. The other was the exact same features, scrambled. Eyes where the mouth should be, nose in the corner, just a mess of parts. The babies stared at the real face every single time, not because they learned to, not because someone taught them. They had been alive for hours. They had never seen a face before in their lives, and they already preferred it. Your brain comes preloaded with a face detector. There is a region in your brain called the fusiform face area. It exists for one reason only, recognizing faces. And it is active from birth, before you could see clearly, before you had any experience of the world at all. Your brain had already decided that faces were the most important thing in it. But here's the part that should stop you. Within 12 to 36 hours of birth, babies don't just prefer faces in general. They prefer their mother's face over a stranger's, over any other face they've ever seen, which, to be fair, is almost none. They've been alive for 1 day, and they already know her. Your brain, before it could see color, before it could see across a room, before it had any idea what the world even was, your brain was already learning the most important face it would ever know. Now, stop for a second, because I need to tell you something about what's happening inside a newborn's brain that almost nobody talks about. And this is the part I mentioned at the start. Right now, your senses are separate. You see with your eyes, you hear with your ears, you feel with your skin. Each sense has its own lane. They don't mix. But in a newborn, they do. At birth, the brain is massively overconnected. Neurons are firing across regions that in an adult brain would never talk to each other. Researchers believe newborns may experience something close to synesthesia, a condition where the senses blur together. Sounds may produce something like color. Touch may produce something like light. The line between what you see and what you hear and what you feel may not exist yet. Your first experience of the world wasn't just blurry and gray. It may have been a storm. One single overwhelming flood of sensation with no walls between any of it. And then, slowly, your brain starts cutting. This is called synaptic pruning. The brain removes the connections it doesn't use. The cross-wiring gets severed. The storm gets sorted into separate channels. And what you're left with is the clean, organized world you live in now. But here's the question that should make you uncomfortable. The world you experience, the one with clear edges and separate senses and stable colors, that's not the raw data coming in through your eyes and ears. That's the edited version. Your brain decided what to keep and what to cut. It built a model of reality and handed it to you. And it made all of those decisions before you were old enough to have any say in it. Now let's talk about depth, because this one has a famous experiment behind it. In 1960, psychologist Eleanor Gibson built what she called the visual cliff. It was a glass table. One half had a solid surface just under the glass. The other half had a steep drop, several feet down, but the glass continued over it, so it was completely safe to crawl across, but it looked like a cliff. She placed crawling babies, around 6 to 8 months old, on the shallow side. Their mothers stood on the deep side and called to them, smiled, waved, reached out. The babies refused to cross, almost every single one. They could see the drop. They patted the glass, felt that it was solid, and still would not move. They sat at the edge and cried. But then Gibson tested younger babies, pre-crawling infants. She placed them directly on the deep side of the glass. No fear, no crying, no reaction at all. They just lay there, calm, completely unbothered by what looked like a cliff beneath them. The fear of heights is not something you're born with. It develops somewhere between birth and the moment you start moving through the world on your own, as if the brain waits until you're actually capable of falling before it bothers to make you afraid of it. You were not born afraid of the ground disappearing. You had to learn that it could. And now here is the part that changes everything. In 1959, two scientists named David Hubel and Torsten Wiesel raised kittens with one eye sewn shut from birth. Not damaged, not removed, just closed. The eye itself was completely healthy. When they opened it weeks later, the kittens were permanently blind in that eye. Not because anything was wrong with the eye, but because the brain had never received input from it during the critical window. So the brain stopped building connections to it. It rewired itself around the other eye, and the closed eye's pathways were pruned away forever. The eye worked perfectly. The brain had simply decided it didn't exist. Hubel and Wiesel won the Nobel Prize for this in 1981. And the same thing happens in humans. Children born with cataracts, clouded lenses that block light, who don't get them treated in the first months of life, can develop permanent blindness in that eye, even after the cataract is removed. The eye is fine, but the brain already closed the door. The window for building that connection is gone. Your brain had a deadline, and it never told you. So here is what was actually happening in those first months of your life. You opened your eyes into a gray, blurry, colorless world the size of a dinner plate. Your senses were tangled together in ways they would never be again. You couldn't see depth. You couldn't see across a room. You had no idea where your body ended and the world began. And your brain was working faster than it ever would again, building connections, cutting others, constructing the entire machinery of how you see, hear, and feel from scratch, using nothing but raw experience and time. Every face you stared at, every sound you heard, every surface you touched. Your brain was using all of it as raw material to build something it had never built before. The world you see right now, the colors, the depth, the sharp edges, the faces you recognize in an instant, none of it came ready-made. Your brain built it, piece by piece, in the first years of your life, before you could walk, before you could talk, before you had any memory of any of it. And that's the part that's hard to sit with. You have no memory of the construction, not a single moment of it. The scaffolding came down before you were old enough to notice it had been there. You woke up, in a sense, inside a finished building with no idea who built it or how. The version of reality you experience every single day, the one you trust completely, the one that feels more solid and certain than anything else in your life, was assembled by a brain that hadn't finished growing yet, by a version of you that couldn't speak, couldn't remember, and couldn't tell you what it was doing. And here is the strangest part of all. You have no way of knowing if it built it right. Every human being who has ever lived started here, in the gray blur, in the storm of mixed senses, staring at a face 8 inches away that they already knew before they could understand what knowing even meant. That baby in your old photos, the one with the wide eyes and the blank stare, looking at a world you can't imagine, that baby built everything you see right now. They just didn't survive long enough for you to remember them doing it.